Story 1. The Call That Never Came. I used to work nights at a small 24-hour convenience store on the edge of town. It was one of those places with flickering fluorescent lights, a row of slushy machines that dripped sticky syrup, and a bell above the door that always sounded too loud at 3 in the morning. My name is Mark. That's what they put on my name tag. I liked the quiet at first. Nights were easy money. One long aisle, a coffee machine, and the radio low. The first night something happened. It started with a call. My phone buzzed twice on the counter. Unknown number. They were the kind of calls you ignore at 3 a.m., but something pushed me to answer. A woman's voice, low and trembling. "Hello," she whispered. "Can you hear me?" I said yes. She didn't give her name. She said she'd been driving, and the GPS had rerouted her toward the old industrial road. She sounded panicked. I could hear rain tapping the receiver, or maybe that was my imagination. She asked if the store was still open. I told her yes, of course. She asked if I could keep the lights on. I laughed. I told her the lights were mine to control, nothing to worry about. She said, "Don't turn them off." "Promise me," I promised. She thanked me and hung up before I could ask for details. An hour later, we had a power flicker. The kind that makes the whole store inhale and exhale. The lights dimmed, the freezer hummed, then came back. I crossed the floor, checked the panel. Nothing odd. I told myself the old wiring was to blame. Still, when that phone vibrated again, I felt cold. "Are you there?" the woman asked, like she had been listening to the hum through the line. She said her car had broken down at a set of lights 2 miles from the store. She described a billboard, a large, faded ad for a defunct pizza place. I could see it in my head. I thought she might be playing with me, or calling the wrong number. I asked her to describe what she saw around her. She said, "There's a figure by the lamppost." It's been there since I drove past. I told her to stay in the car, to lock the doors and call the police. She said she couldn't move. Her voice did something strange then, like it was farther away, like she was being pulled. "Please," she said, "don't turn the lights off." I walked to the front window and watched the dark road. Rain had started, a soft sheet that made the lampposts bloom halos. For a second, I thought I saw something on the curb, a darker shape leaning very still. I tried to tell myself it was a trash bag or a person asleep. The store's front door chimed when a man came in. A delivery driver soaked through. I told him about the call. He joked, said people prank call all the time. At 4 a.m., the store phone rang. A police dispatcher asked if anyone had reported a car breakdown on the industrial road. I told them about it, about the woman who called. They said the 911 call that came in earlier had dropped, and a cruiser was on the way. They asked if I could hold. I said yes. The same minute I agreed, the overhead lights went out completely. The automatic emergency lights kicked in, a pale red glow that made the aisles look moonlit. The radio hissed and cut. My phone line was dead. The emergency exit slammed open. A blast of wind and rain rushed in and sent flyers fluttering like dead birds. My heart thudded. I went to the front, and through the wet glass, I could see a car at the roadside. One headlight out. A person slumped over the wheel. The figure by the lamppost was gone. The cruiser arrived and pulled the driver from the car. He was a woman, soaked to the bone, shaking. She looked right at the store like she was searching for me. The officer asked her if she'd called from inside the store. She shook her head. She told them someone had been standing at the lamppost when she passed, watching her. And later, the same person had been in the passenger seat when she woke up. She said the last thing she remembered was seeing one of my store's fluorescent lights go out. They drove away. The woman was taken to the station to file a report. The officer came back and explained something I had not known. 2 nights earlier, another woman reported the same thing. A call to the store, a voice asking the lights to stay on. The number on her phone was traced to a payphone long torn down. The officer said some precincts have odd traditions. Patrols of the industrial road in bad weather. Lights left on for hours. He left me with a warning. If anything else happened, don't answer the phone. On my way home, I thought about promises. At 3:55 a.m., my phone chimed. Unknown number. I didn't take it. But I saw a message pop up, words in a text. Thank you for keeping the lights on. The next morning, the news had a small blurb. A woman had been found in a ditch a few miles from the store. Cause of death, hypothermia. No foul play suspected. The police said she must have stumbled away from the roadside and collapsed. Weeks later, I found myself at the store after closing, restocking shelves. The phone vibrated on the counter, the same unknown number. I stared at it for a long time, feeling ridiculous and afraid. I hit delete. It rang again. On the 4th ring, a voice said, soft and satisfied, "You promised." I still don't know who called that night. I know only that the lights went out when the phone line cut, and that promises means something in the dark. I quit a month later. Sometimes when I drive past the industrial road, I slow down. And sometimes, when the rain is heavy and the lampposts blur, I think I see a figure by the roadside, waiting for someone to make a promise. When you promise a stranger in the dark, you might be promising something that follows you home. Story 2. The night shift, cleaner. There's a job you only find when nothing else is hiring. Night cleaning at the municipal hospital. My name is Leah. I took it because I needed rent money, and because it was quiet. The night porter let me listen to podcasts while I worked. The hospital smelled like antiseptic, coffee, and old upholstery. Nights were full of soft noises, the beep of monitors, the distant bang of a cart, footsteps that never seemed to come from where you expected. It was during the 2nd week that I noticed the pattern. The same room number kept lighting up on the internal board. Room 312, a private room on the 3rd floor. At 1:20 a.m., the board would assign me to clean it, even when no one had checked out. The badge system showed the door unlocked for a few seconds, then locked again. I asked the night shift nurse, a woman named Maria, about it. She shrugged. Older wings have quirks. Guests move in and out, charting errors. But the charting was clean. No patients were assigned to room 312 for 2 months. The keycard logs didn't show any unauthorized entries beyond the automated ones. Still, at 1:20 a.m., the cleaning cart would roll toward the 3rd floor, and the board would chirp. The 3rd time the board assigned me, I stopped the cart in the corridor and listened. Room 312 was at the end of a short hallway, the kind where the lights are always half-dimmed. I pushed the door, and the room smelled like hospital lemon cleaner. The sheets were folded neat, the bedside lamp off. A chair was angled toward the window. I thought I would see nothing. Instead, the chair creaked once as if someone had just stood. "Hello?" I called, more to myself than anything. My voice felt thin in the long room. The reclining chair had a jacket thrown over it. There was a cup on the nightstand, cold tea with lipstick rim around the cup. It looked recent. My skin went cold. I checked the chart again. Empty. I knocked. No answer. I cleaned the room anyway, straightened the sheets, wiped the rails, replaced the paper. When I turned to leave, the jacket was on the floor. I told myself I had placed it down without thinking. I left the door open and walked back to the cart. At 2:05 a.m., the monitor downstairs in the staff room beeped. Fall detected. Room 312. The system flashed the alert in red. We moved faster than we had a right to. I ran, 2 steps at a time, and the corridor seemed longer than usual. The door to room 312 was closed. I pushed it open and found it empty. No jacket on the floor, no cup. A faint impression in the armchair like someone had been sitting very recently, and a single footprint in powder on the windowsill, as if someone had leaned their shoe against the sill. Maria said the system must have glitched. Maybe someone leaned too hard on the bed rail and the sensor tripped, she said. But the sensor was tied to the chair sensors and the infrared at the head of the bed. Nothing was consistent. The patient database showed no admissions. The security cameras. I asked for the footage. The supervisor's face changed a little, like she had swallowed sudden cold food. They told me the footage from that night was corrupted. Something with the server, the IT guy said. We'll look into it. He asked me to write an incident report. I did. Weak, I started to hear soft noises above the regular hum. A kettle clicking. The slow tick of someone pacing near the window. A voice murmuring numbers under breath. Once I heard singing, a woman humming an old lullaby, except the only occupied rooms on the 3rd floor were a hospice wing 2 doors down, where the night nurse played a radio that used to be on. The tune was different. One late night, I followed the noise to the room and found the chair pulled toward the window and the blind slightly parted. There was a scrawl of writing on the underside of the bedside table. Don't let the lights die. My skin bunched. I rubbed the ink with a finger. It smudged like fresh paint. I started staying later after my shift, watching the hallway from the supply closet. At 1:18 a.m., the board chimed. At 1:20, the cleaning cart slowly rolled itself into the corridor. The hallway lights dimmed, as if someone had squinted at a wall switch. At 1:21, the chair in room 312 moved a little, the way a person shifts to get comfortable. No one in the room. The security camera over the door flickered and showed static like snow. I took a picture from the supply closet with my phone. Later, when I looked at the photo, I saw something in the armchair. Not a person, but a darker shape, like an absence of light. It didn't have a face, only a suggestion of shoulders and a head. The next day, a different cleaner told me that room 312 used to be a private room assigned to an elderly woman years ago. She died alone at night when the old wing had a blackout. They said staff found the lights turned off, the nurse station light dead, and that the woman's son insisted the lights had been on when he dropped by during visiting hours. After that, people swore the room behaved oddly. Sensors tripped, calls dropped, devices died. I stopped sleeping well. My dreams were static in corridors, my hands always holding a cup that refused to warm. One night, a month into the job, I came in early to pick up extra shifts. The ward was dark and quiet, the cleaning board blank. I walked to room 312 and found the door closed. Inside, the armchair was empty, but the television was on, showing static. On the screen, the static coalesced into the blurred shape of a person, only for a moment, who looked back at me and lifted a hand as if to wave. I ran to the nurses' station and told them. They smiled politely and told me to take the night off. They said stress could cause hallucinations. I went home and drank coffee until the sun was bright enough to make the sky feel safe. On my last night before I quit, I decided to leave the lights on in room 312. I left the door open turned the bedside lamp to its brightest, and sat on the hallway bench until dawn. At 3:03 a.m., my phone died without warning. The fluorescent corridor light flickered twice and went red. The chair in the room rocked slowly, then stopped. At 3:07 a.m., something brushed my hand. Not a person. Not warm. Cold, as if someone had cupped ice. I looked down and saw a small piece of paper pressed into my palm. In shaky block letters, it said, "Thank you." When I left the hospital for good the next day, I told myself I'd never work nights again. But months later, I still keep a towel in my car. And sometimes, when I walk past a hospice or an older wing of a hospital, I hear a faint lullaby tug at the air. It's never the same melody twice. Some rooms remember the hands that once comforted them, and they will ask strangers to finish the job. Story 3. The overnight security. The last story comes from a friend who asked to stay anonymous. He worked as a security guard at a small tech campus. Empty buildings at night, glass facades, and green LED signs. It was the kind of job where you patrol parking lots, check doors, and occasionally deal with sprinklers that decide to act like waterfalls. He was in his mid-20s, an easy laugh, a man who believed paranoia was for conspiracy forums. One night in late November, he was assigned to the overnight shift after a new contractor quit unexpectedly. The campus was mostly empty. The offices upstairs had frosted windows that made the inside look like shadows behind glass. Around 2 a.m., his radio crackled with nothing but a tone. He shrugged and walked to the perimeter. At 3:13 a.m., his flashlight picked up footprints in the dust near the loading bay. Small, neat prints that should not have been there. The security cameras showed nothing. The alarms had not been tripped. He chalked it up to kids. But everything in the loading bay was locked. The gate was down. The chains were looped. He called dispatch and asked for logs. The digital entry system said the loading bay had been opened at 3:09 a.m. by an employee badge. ID number 000. There was no employee with that badge. He went inside to check the office floors. The automatic lights came on in a lazy wave as motion sensors caught him. On the 4th floor, the open plan office had an old basement-like bullpen where the night cleaning crew used to leave a kettle. The kettle was on now. Steam climbed in a slow, thin thread and vanished. On the nearest desk, someone had left a mug half full of black coffee. The coffee was warm. He felt watched. The fluorescent lights ahead flickered, slowed, and then steadied. On the far side of the room, a chair faced the wall, as if someone had sat to watch the monitors. He flicked the light near the chair and found nothing, only a bruise of darker carpet where a body might have pressed. The chair was slightly out of place, the arm curled inward like it had been pushed. His radio beeped again. A PA call scanned the campus 4 times and stopped. Then it played, in a voice that was slightly metallic, recordings of someone breathing, slow and patient. His skin tightened. He told himself to record everything, to take photos. He pulled out his phone and took a picture of the chair. In the image, the chair's back seemed to cast a shadow that moved against the light. A shadow that, if you squinted, looked like a person leaning forward. He checked the security log and found a long list of entries. Badge swipes at odd times, doors unlocked, and relocked in patterns that looked like someone was pacing. The personnel IDs were all zeros. He called the head of security and was told to lock the campus and wait. "We'll be there in 10, the voice said. 10 minutes passed. He paced the office corridor. Then the printer in the reception area started to spit paper. Sheets and sheets came out, covered in small typed phrases repeated over and over. "You forgot me. We were here." The pages were damp with condensation. The printer hadn't had paper in it that day, he was sure. He bent to pick one up and his glove stuck to the ink, leaving a smear. At 3:47 a.m., the head of security finally arrived with 2 others. They found the loading bay closed and locked, the kettle cold, the coffee gone. The cameras showed a brief shimmer of static at 3:11 a.m., then normal footage of an empty bay. The audio, when reviewed, had a low-frequency tone beneath the regular hum, the kind of subsonic vibration you feel more than hear. They labeled it interference and scheduled maintenance. They offered him the rest of the night off and comped his next shift with double pay. He said no. He wanted to keep working until morning so he could prove he wasn't imagining things. At 4:23 a.m., the facility-wide lights dimmed, and every security screen showed a hallway they had left earlier in the night. The same hallway, from slightly different angles, with a figure walking at the far end that the cameras could not focus on. When they zoomed in, the figure blurred like heat over asphalt. They chased the figure through the building, down stairwells, between cubicles that smelled of old lunch. Stairwell doors that were locked for years were half open. In one basement office, they found a child's drawing taped to the inside of a closet, stick figures with X's for faces, and a scribbled roof above them. Beneath the drawing were 3 small prints in dust, the same neat footprints they'd seen outside. After that night, the campus changed schedules. Maintenance teams came in with thermal cameras and EMF detectors. Engineers rewrote access logs. The board swore nothing in the physical systems could produce those phantom badge numbers. They told themselves it was a coordinated prank, a team of kids or activists testing security, leaving intangible markers like a ghost story to scare employees. But the guard who told me the story quit within a week. He moved to a town 2 hours away and took a day job stacking shelves. He said he would never work nights again. On his last night, he took the office key home, locked it in a drawer, and left. The week after he left, the cleaning staff found the kettle in the 4th floor bullpen bubbling as if someone had forgotten it on. The camera over the sink had a 10-second clip of empty tile, then a white flash, then static. A month later, a new hire was found by maintenance sleeping in the loading bay. He had a badge clipped to his shirt, 000. When they checked the badge against the system, it registered as active from 2:58 a.m. to 3:22 a.m., the exact period the footprints first appeared. The badge was registered to no one. The man had no memories of how he had gotten there. He told them he had driven out to the campus because he thought he lost his phone. He remembered walking in, the smell of coffee, and a voice saying, "It's okay." When the head of security called me, he wanted to make sure I understood. Technology is supposed to be precise. It leaves traces. Those nights left traces that could not be neatly explained. They had numbers without owners, coffee without drinkers, chairs with shadows. When systems fail in the same pattern, people start to say a single word for what they feel. The guard told me one last thing before he left town. He said, "When I woke up that morning, I still had the feeling of someone sitting on the edge of my bed, like they'd been waiting there all night to see if I would get up." Some places remember clocks that have stopped and people who forgot to leave. Sometimes, if you work the wrong shift, you become part of that memory. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories.